It is 9:29 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. God, I can't believe we're still doing this thing. It is the 24th day of March 2025, and this is episode 1060 of Bitcoin. And I made somebody mad today when I gave a Toastmasters speech at the Toastmasters Club, because I decided to do a persuasive speech about why you should buy Bitcoin. Except that I came at it from a different perspective. Instead of saying all the neat stuff about Bitcoin, I told them all the stuff that was wrong in the world that Bitcoin fixes. And I got a pretty severe reaction from one of the members. He was very not happy at all with what I was saying, which means that that was one of the most effective speeches that I've given. And I'm going to give it to you, but not right now. We've got other things to do. We're going to talk about the FAIR Act. Metaplanet is in the news, as is Michael Saylor. And then we're going to we're going to talk about some Bittrex stuff. And the U.S. Treasury is in the news, specifically about Tornado Cash, an interesting development. I don't know if it's going to help the Tornado Cash guys. In my opinion, it should, but maybe there's other reasoning. Arizona legislature is advancing Bitcoin bills like nobody's business. It's like hand over fist over in Arizona. And then the Breeze SDK, the Breeze people, have released the names of all their cohorts for the first quarter of 2025. And there's some interesting people that are working with the Breeze software development kit. But first, ladies and gentlemen, low elites with the FAIR Act would protect Bitcoin holders. This is out of Bitcoin Magazine. A few weeks ago, we briefly touched on how civil asset forfeiture may apply to Bitcoin, a process in which the government may seize citizens' assets without accusing the person of a crime. With the U.S. government stating that civil asset forfeiture will form a key pillar in building its strategic Bitcoin reserve, the Fifth Amendment Integrity Restoration Act of 2023, also known as the FAIR Act, is arguably the most important bill introduced in Congress today to protect Bitcoin holders from extensive government overreach. Without it, many may see their Bitcoin seized and forfeited on behalf of the reserve with little to no recourse. Civil asset forfeiture has long been argued to be in need of drastic reform. Across the country, states have become known to abuse the process to enrich their own law enforcement agencies, which may appropriate the funds collected. From police seizing a Vietnam veteran's van for serving as a, quote, container for marijuana, or attempting to appropriate a man's life savings over a seatbelt violation, civil asset forfeiture is one of the gravest abuses of power in the country today, according to the Institute of Justice. Civil asset forfeiture is particularly problematic as the process creates a financial incentive for law enforcement to forfeit citizens' property to the government without due process, as stated by the ACLU. Especially in light of Bitcoin's scarcity and its consequent value appreciation over time, this financial incentive is not only exacerbated when civil asset forfeiture is applied, but to build the strategic Bitcoin reserve. To protect citizens from civil asset forfeiture abuse, the FAIR Act of 2023, which was introduced or reintroduced in 2024, co-sponsored by Senator Lummis, among others, aims to revise the federal laws that govern the process to ensure that civil asset forfeiture proceedings follow due process as governed by the Fifth Amendment. First, it does so by raising the evidentiary standard from preponderance of evidence, meaning that a party's claim is rather true than not, to clear and convincing evidence, increasing the burden of proof the government must provide to enforce any forfeiture. With the FAIR Act, enforcing agencies have to establish that there was a sustained connection between the property and the offense, as well as that the owner of any interest in the seized property used the property with intent to facilitate the offense, or knowingly consented, or was willfully blind to the use of the property by another in connection with their offense. This forms the most important aspect of the act as it applies to Bitcoin. At the moment, The government could seize a person's legally acquired Bitcoin if the UTXO itself had, for example, previously been used in sanctions evasion or touched a darknet market, regardless of whether its owner was aware of the coin's history when obtaining it or not. By introducing active consent and willful blindness, the Fair Act prerequisites that the owner of the Bitcoin be forfeited was aware of the acquired BTC's origins for forfeiture to apply. The Fair Act also requires the government to appoint a counsel to property owners who are financially unable to obtain representation, or if the cost of obtaining representation would exceed the value of seized property, an issue that has arguably kept many from contesting the forfeiture of assets in the first place, as civil asset forfeiture effectively reverses the burden of proof. At the moment, to get your property back, you need to prove the government wrong instead of the government having to make a case against you. Quote, civil asset forfeiture allows federal law enforcement to seize property of Americans who haven't even been charged with or convicted of a crime, said Senator Booker, who introduced the bill together with Senator Rand Paul. Quote, under this system, police can keep cash, cars, and even homes based on mere suspicion of a crime. These losses often become law enforcement's profit because the burden of the property owner to prove they should get their property back. The government should never have the power to seize a person's property without due process, yet under current civil asset forfeiture laws, Americans are being stripped of their property without ever being charged nor convicted of a crime. The Fair Act directly addresses these injustices and is a critical step toward restoring fairness and accountability, protecting property owners' rights, and curbing the weaponization of civil asset forfeiture laws once and for all, Rand Paul added to the statement. If you are rooting for the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, the passing of the Fair Act should be a prerequisite for its establishment to ensure that the government's Bitcoin stack is not built on the abuse of its powers. All right, so that's the end of the article. Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with Lowell Leitz here. We're going to have, but even if it wasn't for the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, civil asset forfeiture has been going on for a long time, and it's become worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point that you can't, if you just got like $5,000 in cash and you're driving in your car, and you get pulled over for like a tail light being out, it's very, very possible that you could lose that $5,000 forever simply because you can't explain why you have it. Why do you have this money, sir? Well, I just carry $5,000 with me all the time. Well, what for? What's its purpose? I don't know, in case I see something I want to buy. Like, for instance, my stepfather used to carry a couple of $1,000s on him at all times in cash. In his wallet. Well, actually in his billfold, he kept it in his front pocket. But he was a junkyard guy. So he was always figuring out that if he didn't have cash and somehow or another he was somewhere where, God forbid, an auction on cars was going on, he wasn't going to have cash to actually participate in the auction. This is how he thought. Because he would buy cars and he would sell parts off those cars because he had a junkyard. It was a salvage yard, right? I mean, it was like, that, I mean, I know it's weird, but my stepfather was a salvage guy. But that's the way he operated his business. And yet there were several occasions in which he could have had that cash lifted from him because saying, well, I need it just in case I find an automobile auction is not exactly something you can prove your intent to. You could very well be wanting to buy a bunch of marijuana and sell it to school children, right? And that's the issue with civil asset forfeiture, is that shit's going on. If you've got a wad of cash, you can't expressly prove your intent for that cash, and nor should you have to. This is protected under the Fifth Amendment, and yet we are just allowing the Bill of Rights to be sandbagged left and right. So Lola Leitz is absolutely correct. If any of us think that it's a good idea to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve at the federal level, then we need the Fair Act to actually pass and be signed into law because it fixes a lot of things even without the existence of Bitcoin. It fixes people losing their property for no good reason. Now on to Japan, where Metaplanet has brought Bitcoin Treasury to $293 million with their latest buy that they announced sometime this morning. This is Luke Edwards from Decrypt. Japanese Bitcoin Treasury company Metaplanet has just disclosed that it purchased yet more Bitcoin, 150 Bitcoin, in fact, and that brings the company's total Bitcoin holdings to 3,350 Bitcoin. And at the time of publishing, it means that the company holds just over $290 million, or in its local currency, that's 42.21 billion yen. The Bitcoin price has inched past $88,000, having gained 3.5% in the past day. Before this purchase, the company ranked as the 10th largest corporate holder of Bitcoin in the world. The Japanese BTC Treasury company, whose motto is now, quote, secure the future with Bitcoin, end quote, also recently announced Eric Trump, son of the president, joining the board of directors, which I think is a terrible move. It's just not going to work out the way they think it is, but hey, it is what it is. And then they go way back into Trump. And that's really, honestly, that's all we really need to know, is that Metaplanet has continued to buy Bitcoin, as has Michael Saylor, who did his little thing on Twitter yesterday or last night, where he said something and posted a graph that shows all the times that Strategy has actually bought Bitcoin. And that always means that he's going to announce on Monday morning that he bought more Bitcoin, and he did. Zoltan Vardai, Cointelegraph. Michael Saylor's Strategy has acquired over $500 million worth of Bitcoin as institutional interest in exchange-traded fund inflows make a comeback. Strategy acquired 6,911 Bitcoin for over $584 million between March 17th and March 23rd at an average price of $84,529 per coin, according to a March 24th filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Following the latest acquisition, the company now holds 506,137 Bitcoin. That's well over 500,000. And they acquired it at an aggregate purchase price of roughly $33.7 billion, an average purchase price of approximately $66,608 per coin, inclusive of fees and expenses. The milestone comes a day after Strategy co-founder Michael Saylor hinted again at an impending Bitcoin investment after the company announced the pricing of its latest tranche of preferred stock on March the 21st. The preferred stock was sold at $85 per share and featured a 10% coupon. According to Strategy, the offering should bring the company approximately $711 million in revenue, scheduled to settle tomorrow, March the 25th, 2025. Strategy, the world's largest corporate Bitcoin holder, continues buying the dips despite widespread investor fears of a premature bear market. Strategy's latest investment comes amid global trade war fears, which analysts say could weigh on both traditional and digital asset markets, at least through early April. Despite a multitude of positive crypto-specific developments, global tariff fears will continue to pressure the markets until at least April the 2nd, according to Nikolai Sondergaard, a research analyst at Nansen. Quote, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the tariffs from April 2nd onward. Maybe we'll see some of them dropped, but it depends if all countries can agree. That's the biggest driver at this moment, the analyst said during Cointelegraph's Chain Reaction daily Twitter show on March the 21st. Risk assets may lack direction until the tariff-related concerns are resolved, which may happen between April 2nd and sometime in July, presenting a positive market catalyst, he added. U.S. President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariff rates are set to take effect on April the 2nd, despite earlier comments from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent indicating a possible delay in their implementation. So who knows? Who knows what the hell's going to happen? Nobody. I was talking to my sister about this the other night. Nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows what to do until we get some kind of real clear landscape ahead of us. It's hard to, put your automobile in gear and just haul ass across it because you don't know what's out there. And nobody else does either. There may be a handful of people in the world right now that actually knows what to do, where to put their cash, how to convert their cash into some other asset. Most people don't. And that's why you're seeing a whole bunch of people just fly to cash. When in doubt, cash up, brother. That's pretty much what it's always been. So there's only a very few people that actually know how to navigate what the hell's going on here. And it's going to be people like George Soros' son. Now, I'm not sure if George Soros himself actually has the competency anymore because he really is very, very old. But it's people like that. And there's only really a handful of those guys that really know what the hell they're doing. Even if they are evil as AF, doesn't matter. They do know what they're doing. Okay, and here's somebody else who knows what they're doing, and SoapMiner is in the Circle P. The Circle P is open for business. If you want soap, if you want it handmade, if you want it made out of tallow, which is beef fat, that's right, beef fat. You're maybe asking, why the hell would you make soap with fat? Because that's the way you make soap. Any soap that you've ever used has a fatty acid base. That's the way soap works. But what I like about SoapMiner is that he's got all of 4 ingredients. He's got fat. He's got a like lye, and I think there's water. And then if it's a fragrant like this peppermint tallow pack of 2 5-ounces, 2 5-ounce bars for $21. Then it's going to have the ingredient of fragrance. But this is just looking at the ingredient list itself, it just looks very, very clean. And I'm looking at the pictures, and these are very nice looking bars of soap like you'd find in a craft store. So if you want to get some soap and support your fellow pleb, please support SoapMiner by buying his soap. Again, I'm on the website right now, which is SoapMiner.com. That is SoapMiner.com. We're talking about soap that you clean yourself with, and if you can't spell it after that, I don't know what to do for you. SoapMiner.com. You can get peppermint tallow, pack of 2 5-ounce bars for $21. There's rough cut tallow packs of 3, 4 to 4 and 4.5 ounce bars for $21. You can get a rustic tallow pack of 2 5-ounce bars for $21. You've got all kinds of soap. There's pine tar soap. There's lavender soap. There's all kinds. Let's see, the rustic tallow, and then there's peppermint. And he's actually sold out of the tea tree tallow soap and the lavender tallow soap. Both of those are actually sold out. So if you want to buy for Bitcoin, and you're not in the Circle P if you don't accept Bitcoin for your goods and services, go over to SoapMiner.com and just purchase or put something in your cart, and then go over to your cart where you can check out. That's where you'll see that you can have it generate a Zapright invoice, and you can pay with Bitcoin. Down at the bottom of the checkout screen, there's a huge button that says, or actually it's not the button, it's just a little, it's a big old logo here. It says Bitcoin accepted here. He does take Bitcoin for his goods and services. SoapMiner, I appreciate it. SoapMiner said he's going to send me a couple of samples of bars, and I cannot wait to get those, because then I'll be able to say that I've actually used them. But in the order, if you decide to order soap because you heard it here on the Circle P, I need you to tell SoapMiner that you heard it here on the Circle P. That helps him figure out whether or not the sale was worth cutting me a few Satoshis. And at the very bottom on the left-hand side of the checkout screen, you can write into notes. The last box is order notes, and it's optional. But if you want to say something to SoapMiner, this is where you would put it, right? It's right underneath your zip code, which is part of your shipping information. So in that's where you tell SoapMiner that you heard it here on the Circle P. Please do so. Give a pleb a hand up. Now, I pissed that dude straight off today when I was given a 5 to 7 minute speech about Bitcoin and why buy Bitcoin. Now, we talk about this all the time, clearly, and it's been sort of back in vogue to talk about how we kind of stop trying to orange pill regular people because it's so very, very difficult. And so I wanted to give this persuasive speech that comes at why you should buy Bitcoin from a different angle. So here's essentially what it was that I said today. I'm going to give you the top 5 reasons to buy Bitcoin. Now, I could tell you all about Bitcoin's decentralization, but honestly, most people, especially regular people, they don't really know what that means. And that's a problem. I could tell somebody about the self-custodial aspects of Bitcoin where you hold it yourself and nobody is an intermediary for you. And guess what? Most normie people don't care. It's not even that they don't know what that means. They don't even want to examine what self-custody actually means because they don't care. They're busy putting food on their table. They're busy going to the fiat mines. And they're busy trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with the rest of their life. I could tell them all about the 21 million Bitcoin cap. Most people have no idea that one Bitcoin is composed of 100,000 or 100 million Satoshis. So they're not really going to understand what a 21 million cap means. And if you try to do all these things, you're going to set in a massive amount of confusion and then their eyes glaze over. Hell, I could even tell them something interesting like the history of great Americans that have talked about what money should actually be backed by. Should it be backed by gold, silver? Should it be backed by oil? There were 3 people, Henry Ford, Buckminster Fuller, and Nikola Tesla, and all of them were contemporaries of each other, which meant that they were roughly all alive at pretty much the same time. And they all said pretty much the same thing about what they thought money should be at roughly the very early part of the 1900s, like 1901, 1910, things like that. They said, all 3 of them said that the only money that is going to be worth anything should be backed by energy. Ford said it. Buckminster Fuller said it. Tesla said it. And these aren't exactly slouches. Each one of these 3 people changed the face of industry, the face of architecture, the face of invention. And all of them separately said the exact same thing about what should actually back money. But guess what? Telling a normie that, they're not going to care. They don't give a shit. They've never met Nikola Tesla. And they sure probably haven't even heard of Buckminster Fuller except in passing. They know who the hell Henry Ford is, but he's been dead a long time. They don't care. Or I could, if you wanted to, we could talk about how the code of Bitcoin is protected free speech under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Where did that happen? Well, that was a little court case called Bernstein versus the United States, and it was settled in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Northern California, is essentially where that court case happened. And that's where the RSA encryption software was deemed protected free speech by the United States government, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's never been taken to the Supreme Court. Not yet, anyway. One of these days it might, but for right now, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is the highest authority in the land that has told us that writing software is protected under the First Amendment. I could tell them that. They don't even know what the First Amendment is. They say they do. They say it's free speech, but they'll be the first one to say, "Oh, but you hurt my little ears with saying something about Orange Man that was like somehow kind of nice. And therefore, I hate you and I hate the First Amendment because you shouldn't be allowed to say that." See where I'm going with all this? This is, in my opinion, this is not the way to get people to buy Bitcoin because first and foremost, after all of that, what they don't really understand is how bad the economy structure is, how bad the money is, how we've eviscerated it and then taken its empty shell and broken what's left of its back upon the rocks of indignity. So here are the top 5 real reasons to buy Bitcoin. 1971, the gold window was closed by Richard Milhous Nixon. So in very early August of 1971, a French warship floated into New York Harbor and set anchor. And they were there for one reason and one reason only. They were concerned about the gold that the United States held that was owned by France, that was sent over at the early days of World War II to get it away from Hitler in case he decided to empty out all the gold. They sent it to New York to be held in a bank. Well, they just kept it there because of various reasons. But then we started mucking around in Vietnam, and we had already had a pretty bad showing in Korea. And at this point, the French get nervous. They want their gold back. So they send a military ship, not a cruise liner for, passengers, a military ship. That was a statement. We want our gold. We want it now. They were nervous as nervous can be. It took them a long time to get their gold, but 3 days or 4 or somewhere around there, let's just call it a handful of days later, is when Nixon sat down in front of the television cameras and told the United States citizenry that he was temporarily closing the gold window. And the gold window was the facility that allowed nation states to be able to take their U.S. dollars and remit them and get gold in the hard metal back. And that was done. Temporarily has now lasted 54 years. Does that make you feel good? How about number 4 on my list of the top 5 reasons to buy Bitcoin, which is fractional reserve banking? There was a time when you took cold hard cash to the bank and you handed it over and put it in your savings account, and they kept that cash. And there was a time when they actually made loans against the cash that they actually kept. But that's not the way it's done anymore. We have something called fractional reserve banking, which means that the bank only has to keep a fraction of the cash on hand in case all the depositors come back and want their money. They figure, in 1980, they figured it was only going to be, 1 out of 10 people are going to want all their cash. So they only kept 10% of what it is that they had on their books as far as they called deposits. And for a long time, that worked. But in the year 2000, that was dropped to 3%. No longer was it 1 in 10. It was now 3 people in 100 would be able to be made whole on their deposits, because the bank was now only having to hold 3 pennies on every dollar deposited in their account in case they needed to, depositors came in and said, hey man, I want my money. In 2025, that number has dropped to 0. The banks and financial institutions in the United States are no longer required to have any reserve cash on hand as a fraction of what their deposits they say is on their books. Does that help you? Is that good? Well, what about money creation? Number 3 on my top 5 reasons to buy Bitcoin is the fact that home, business, and auto loans all create brand spanking new money. It's not the Fed. That we're not even talking about the Federal Reserve yet. No, this is just retail. At the retail level, if you get a home loan, you create cash, or the bank actually creates it for you, and that's how they do it. And same with an auto loan, right? Now, technically, when you pay off the mortgage on your house, the new money, quote unquote, the new money, no longer exists. It's technically extinguished. However, that money hangs out for 30 years because most people get a 30-year mortgage in the United States. So that means that you're dealing with the effects of the inflation produced by the new money that was produced when you decided to buy a house for 30 years. Huh? How about a car loan? That's 5.5 years on average. 64 months or something like that. And so that's new money, and it hangs around for 5.5 years. How about a business loan? Well, on average, your business loan lasts about 10 years. So for 10 years, people are dealing with the effects of the inflation caused by the creation of the money for that business loan because the bank just pressed a button. That's how easy it is to make money in the United States. But then we do finally get to the Federal Reserve themselves in cahoots with the Treasury market. Or not Treasury, well, actually the Treasury market, but the Treasury Department. The Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department in cahoots to print money and make money printer go burr. So first, the Treasury does not print money. What they do print are debt instruments like Treasury bonds and Treasury bills. Now, on the open market, people will decide that they want to purchase that debt. It is a debt instrument. People are just banking on the fact that the United States is going to be able to service the debt. And what they're actually doing is they're kind of loaning the United States money when they purchase bonds. When you purchase a T-bill or a Treasury bond, you're actually saying, yeah, I mean, I trust you. I'll back you. But I want my percentage rate, and that's the coupon rate that you get with the Treasury bond. Right now, it's between 4.25 and 4.5%. However, there's a lot of times when the auction or the sale of said Treasury bonds and Treasury bills don't actually sell all the debt instrumentation that the United States really wanted. They wanted to be able to get more money. So what happens then? Well, say hello to your friends at the Federal Reserve, which is about as federal as Federal Express. They turn the money printer on, money printer go burr. They take the money that they printed and they buy the debt from the United States Treasury, effectively producing brand new money that goes into the economy. And all of this has the effect on something called the M2 money supply. That is number one on my top 5 reasons to buy Bitcoin. In August of 1971, the very same month and the very same year that Nixon took us off the gold standard, the amount of money in circulation of U.S. dollars, and this savings account, that's your checking account, that is anything that is easily convertible into U.S. dollars, which would be like Treasury bonds and Treasury bills. It doesn't really include stuff like housing because housing is not really all that liquefiable, or at least not easily. So M2 is concerned with either straight up liquid cash or something that is so close to being liquid cash, like Treasury bonds and bills, that it might as well be cash. That's the M2 money supply. And in U.S. dollar terms, we had $685 billion in the same month, in the same year that Nixon closed the gold window. And 53 years later, in August of 2024, the amount of dollars is now $21 trillion, according to the Fed, which is like, St. Louis Federal Reserve keeps, that's the Fed. They keep these numbers. They're the ones that put together how much money is actually in circulation. That's one of the jobs that they do. That's a 30x increase from 1971 to 2024. 53 years, they increased the amount of money 30 times. 30 times, not 30%. No, 30 times. When we get to the number of anywhere between 30 and 40%, now that number I reserve for the amount of money in the M2 that was increased from the time COVID started. So we're talking 3 or 4 years. In 3 or 4 years, they added anywhere between 30 and 40% of the amount of money that's ever been in circulation in the short span of 3 years, or we'll say 4. They have no guardrails. There's no guidelines. There's no stopping this train. It's like an 18-wheeler that's screaming down a hill and they've lost their brakes. This is why you buy Bitcoin. Not to mention, and we did just talk about civil asset forfeiture. Did you know that the European Union is going to redirect, quote unquote, redirect 10 trillion euros of, quote, unused savings. That's the savings of their citizens. They're not talking about the citizens of the bank accounts and savings of businesses. They're talking about the citizenry, although I'm sure small businesses are included in this. There's not going to be any way that the citizens can just say, no, you can't have my money. They're just going to take it. They're going to redirect it into strategic investments. And by calling it unused savings, they're basically putting a label on it that says, this is terrible money. You're a bad steward of your money. You're a bad steward, and we're going to take over, but we're doing it in your name. Bitcoin fixes not only that, but everything above that. From 5 through 4, 3, 2, down to 1, it fixes all of the problems. It fixes M2 money supply. It fixes money printer go burr. It fixes home business and auto loans creating money out of thin air. It fixes fractional reserve banking. And it basically gives the finger to August 15th, 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window. If you want to learn more about Bitcoin, go to learnmeabitcoin.com. That's learnmeabitcoin.com. And if you don't know what Bitcoin is, that's the place to actually start. If and only if what I've told you here today scares the piss out of you. It should. Let's run the numbers. Futures and commodities and breaking. A Tesla showroom in Texas has been targeted with an incendiary device, according to police. I have no idea about the rest of the news on that. That's just a breaking, a little red banner across CNBC.com's website, where we're getting the price of oil as being up in the green, 1.19% to $69.09 a barrel. Brent North Sea is up 1.14% to $72.98. Natural gas swinging the other direction as usual, 0.78% to the downside at $3.94 per thousand cubic feet. Gasoline is up 1/4 of a point to $2.20 a gallon. All of your shiny metal rocks are not making Peter Schiff very happy today. Gold is down 1/5 of a point to $3,015, so it's still over $3,000. I guess Peter should still be happy, man. Silver is down 0.05%. Platinum is down 1 1/3. Copper's down 1/2, as is palladium. Ag, what do we got? Biggest winner looks to be chocolate, 3.94% to the upside. Biggest loser is sugar, 2 1/4 to the downside. I got live cattle moving sideways, however, but lean hogs are down 0.6. Feeder cattle moving sideways as well. Indices seem to be very, very happy today, so I guess it means that Trump did not say the word tariff, and somebody may have said tariff delay. That may have been Scott Besson. Who knows? Because the Dow is up 1.12%, S&P is up 1.5%, NASDAQ, wow, 1.8%, and holy shit, the S&P Mini is up over 2%. Bitchin', dude. And we've got a bump on Bitcoin. $88,150 per coin gives us a $1.75 trillion market cap. We can buy 29.3 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,841,188.44 of. And average fees per block are low, 0.04 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. It looks that there's about 36 blocks carrying 35,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 6 Satoshis per VByte. Low priority is going to get you in at 4 Satoshis per VByte. Hash rate has exploded yet one more time. We are well above 800, 827.7 exahashes per second at this time gives us plenty of security on the Bitcoin network. And from Women in Bitcoin, which was Friday's show, I got Psyduck with 1,000 sats says Axelrod. Psyduck with a 570 says Psyduck. Pies with 420 says, thank you, sir. Hashtag 40HPW. Yodel with 300 says, Psyduck. Permanerd with 234 says, much love back, David. I appreciate that, brother. Let's see, is there anything else? Nope, that's it. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news. You can use former Bittrex executives raise $40 million in Bitcoin to back a Barbados licensed insurance firm. I've talked to you before about insurance and Bitcoin and how it's going to be a much bigger deal than people give it credit for. I like to say that I am correct. This is from CoinDesk and it's written by Ian Allison. Tabit Insurance, a Barbados-regulated insurance company established by former executives from the now-shuttered cryptocurrency exchange Bittrex, said that it raised $40 million of a reserve composed entirely of Bitcoin, with which to write traditional insurance and reinsurance business. The insurance company, which emerged in January of this year with plans to offer Bitcoin-backed liability policies for company directors and officers, claims to be the first regulated risk carrier to rely on Bitcoin-only reserve to write traditional policies priced in United States dollars. The firm has a Class II insurance license from the Barbados Financial Services Commission. The crossover between crypto and insurance usually involves shoehorning existing risk categories for loss and theft into converging hot and cold versions of digital asset custody. Tabit's approach is interesting because it explores ways that firms and individuals can capitalize on their Bitcoin holdings without getting involved in trading or incurring significant counterparty risk. Tabit co-founder and CEO Steven Stonberg said Bitcoin holders are invited to contribute assets to the firm's system of segregated reserve cells, which is managed using non-custodial tech from Fireblocks to earn yields of around, 10%. A good analogy from the world of insurance is the way accredited investors known as names, and it actually says names, in quotes, deploy assets into insurance syndicates at the Lloyd's of London insurance market. Quote, for a technology like crypto, you may need a new underwriter, but the way the insurance is done is fundamentally the same as before, Stoneberg said in an interview. Quote, we are holding our regulatory capital in Bitcoin, and I think bringing in a new capital source to the insurance industry and innovating with a balance sheet is an opportunity that other people weren't really looking at. Now, that's the end of the article, and even I'm kind of still confused about how Bitcoin gets used in insurance. I mean, I get it, but I'm pretty sure that there's an entire section about this and the logic behind it that I'm missing, and shit, that's okay. You can't keep up with everything. You can't pretend like you know it all. That's just bad form. But you know what it is that's bugging me about this, don't you? Yep. Yields. Earn yields of around 10%. First question to ask is, where does the yield come from? And I'm not saying that because I'm automatically calling bullshit on Tabit. They may be completely above board. It may be a great idea, and maybe it's going to not go down in flames like BlockFi and FTX and Alameda Research and like all the gang of thieves that we saw go down in 2021, 2022. Maybe. Hopefully. I mean, I wish them all the best. And I also think it's important for us to understand that insurance and reinsurance is going to be massive when it comes to using Bitcoin. And this is a section or a sector that I really want to learn about more. I just got to find the time to dig through it. So if any of you guys out there that know a hell of a lot more about insurance and reinsurance and why Bitcoin should be part of that and why yields are okay to talk about when it comes to this, please, please, please let me know. Get a hold of me on Nostr. You can get a hold of me on Twitter. It's David Bennett NB for David Bennett NunyaBidness. And I mean, if you want to get hold of me over there on Twitter, that's more than welcome. I prefer it on Nostr. Somebody out there knows a shit ton more about insurance and reinsurance than I do. I guarantee it. But we are moving on to the United States Treasury removing tornado cash from the OFAC sanctions address list. Interesting. Atlas 21. The United States Department of Treasury has officially removed economic sanctions against Tornado Cash, as communicated on March 21st in a statement. The decision represents a change in direction in the American government's position towards the cryptocurrency mixing service originally sanctioned for alleged links to illicit activities. But despite lifting the sanctions, American authorities have emphasized continued concern regarding state-sponsored hacking activities, particularly those originating from your friends in North Korea. According to the statement, the Treasury remains determined to use its powers to counter malicious cyber actors who exploit digital assets and their ecosystems for illicit profits, with particular attention to, quote, the regime's ability to fund its weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs. Yeah, they're always 2 weeks away from having a, nuclear bomb, aren't they? Well, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated, quote, digital assets offer enormous opportunities for innovation and value creation for the American people. Protecting the digital asset industry from abuse by North Korea and other illicit actors is essential to establishing the United States leadership and ensure that American citizens can benefit from financial innovation and inclusion. Put a tie on that suit speak, brother. The removal from the blacklist follows a November 6, 2024 ruling by the United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which determined that OFAC exceeded its authority in sanctioning Tornado Cash's immutable smart contracts. According to the court, such smart contracts cannot be considered property under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And here it is. Despite the platform's removal from the blacklist, Tornado Cash founders Roman Storm and Roman Semenov continue to face legal issues. When's the case going to be dropped? There's clearly not a problem with Tornado Cash. United States Department of Treasury basically just said it's okay. Yet, the judge hasn't said, you know what, there's no basis for this case anymore. It looks to me like unless we raise a huge fuss, and hopefully the Bitcoin Policy Institute guys might, jump in on this, Roman Storm and Roman Semenov are going to go ahead and be charged under the original charges and face prison, face having their lives taken away from them, or at least a good number of years of their lives taken away from them. And yet it's okay. The very thing that they're being accused of, the Tornado Cash thing, it's fine. It's not sanctioned anymore. United States Treasury basically just said, okay. And we're still here. We got to ask ourselves why. Well, let's fly on over to the Sunshine State, Arizona, where the Arizona legislature has advanced not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Bitcoin bills, including one about legal tender. This is out of Bitcoin News, written by Guy Malone, with varying Bitcoin reserve bills being introduced in 24 U.S. states, according to BNN Bloomberg. Such measures were approved in both the Arizona House and Senate this week, along with 3 more Bitcoin and cryptocurrency-related bills. The state of Arizona passed Senate Bill 1025 on a 5-2 vote, as previously reported by Bitcoin News, permitting up to 10% of government and public funds capital to be invested in Bitcoin and other digital assets. The Arizona House of Representatives also voted 17-12 to move forward Senate Bill 1373, which doesn't make sense because it should be a House bill, but maybe it's a typo, maybe not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Whatever it was sponsored by Senator Mark Fincham, which similarly proposed both purchases of digital assets and also limit the amount which can be invested. The Digital Watch reported on Thursday, quote, SB 1373 includes risk management provisions such as limiting the treasurer's ability to invest more than 10% of the fund in any single year. Most proposed bills this session across the United States were specific to, quote, strategic reserve bills, such as moved ahead recently in Oklahoma, Texas, and Utah, failing in more states than passing, including Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Pennsylvania, and Wyoming, as MyTrade reported. However, Arizona lawmakers seem to be leading the states with their Bitcoin approach by moving forward with more nuanced, proactive cryptocurrency adoption bills. Senate Bill 1128, the Cryptocurrency Payment Authorization Bill, according to Dwayne Morris, Government Strategies, quote, aims to modernize the state's payment system by allowing state agencies to accept cryptocurrencies for various obligations such as fines, taxes, fees, and penalties. SB 1062, the Bitcoin as Legal Tender Bill, states that it will define legal tender to include cryptocurrency and applies the definition to all Arizona revised statutes. Quote, statutes defines legal tender as a medium of exchange, including specie, that is authorized by the United States Constitution or U.S. Congress to pay debts, public charges, taxes, and dues, the bill's text continued. While the topic of whether capital gains tax liabilities on Bitcoin will ever be removed at the federal level remains moot for now, the proposed Arizona legislation states, quote, any gains or losses derived from the exchange of one kind of legal tender for another is exempt from individual and corporate state income tax. So they're wanting to remove capital gains from the state version of income tax. There's only like 3 or 4 states that do not have income tax. Washington State and Texas, I know for a fact, don't have state income tax. There's at least a couple more. But the vast majority of the states in the United States, you pay both federal tax as well as state tax. I never want to live in one of those states. Anyway, the last bill, this is House Bill 2387, brings Bitcoin ATMs into the spotlight. The regulation of Bitcoin ATMs bill is targeted to protect Arizona residents from cryptocurrency-related scams. Law enforcement agencies and AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, have both been supportive of this bill, reporting that many elderly people in the state have lost money to criminal activity. House Bill 2387 seeks a $2,000 limit on how much cash an individual can place into a Bitcoin ATM per day. And I think, we said a little bit more. One Arizona victim lost $28,000, which she had put into the machines and sent the Bitcoin away. Originally targeting a $1,000 cap, the bill also requires operators to make sure users specifically acknowledge the fees they're being charged, some of which are up to 20%. That's usury territory. If you want to know what usury is, read the Old Testament. The Jews had it defined pretty clearly. The state of New Jersey has, in fact, introduced 2 identical bills, S3694 and A4880, to ban all Bitcoin ATMs in that state. And that, again, is in New Jersey, not Arizona. They're just giving some other context. While none of the bills Arizona is considering have been fully enacted into law yet, all of them have cleared their committees, their floor votes, and all 5 Bitcoin-related bills have moved forward successfully, but they're now awaiting final House or Senate votes or straight-up governor approval. So Arizona coming from behind of all these states. Right now, it looks to me like Arizona's taken the lead in the race to be the first to not woodshed themselves. And finally, the Breeze SDK, powering Bitcoin payments across industries, meet the first quarter 2025 cohort. This is out of lightning.news, written by Crewby. Breeze, the leading provider of Bitcoin Lightning Network Infrastructure Software Development Kit, today announced its partner cohort showcasing 10 innovative companies leveraging its infrastructure to redefine payments in artificial intelligence, decentralized finance, social media, and beyond. These integrations underscore Lightning's rapid expansion from niche technology to global financial backbone, enabling instant, low-cost Bitcoin transactions for millions of users. First one on the list is something called AssetFi. The innovation? It enables peer-to-peer loans using Bitcoin as collateral, bypassing traditional banks. Number 2, Cowbolt. They combine encrypted team messaging with Lightning payments for seamless cost sharing and rewards. DexTrade is number 3. They facilitate trustless atomic swaps across blockchains using Lightning for instant settlements. Flash offers self-custodial Bitcoin/USDT payment tools for merchants with offline Lightning support launching in the second quarter of this year. Lightning Pay is a New Zealand-based wallet driving Bitcoin adoption in Oceania, processing 1 billion sats monthly. Open Agents is a decentralized AI service with a voice-driven assistant called Onyx and Bitcoin-powered payment marketplace. Satoshi app bridges fiat and Bitcoin with custodial USD accounts and self-custodial Lightning/liquid wallets. Shakes.co is a multifunctional platform for recurring payments, team payouts, and private Bitcoin/shitcoin number one transactions. Tidebinder provides scalable Bitcoin wallets for SMBs, banks, and fintechs tailored to diverse business needs. Then, finally, number 10, ZapZap, the tipping app on Twitter where 69% of the tips are humor-driven, 69 or 420 sats. Not exactly sure what the hell that means, but hey, ZapZap, you go on. So why the Breeze software development kit? Plug and play API, multi-chain flexibility, regulatory tools. You know, and Breeze has been around for a long time. In fact, they're one of the first ones on the scene that had a Lightning software development kit. I mean, they've been around for a long, long time. This SDK is pretty much used all over the place. It's been tested and revamped and tested, and bugs have been worked out for years at this point. So if you're a developer and you're wanting to find something that you can just plug and play with, go look at the Breeze SDK. Breeze is spelled B-R-E-E-Z. That's B-R-E-E-Z. And that's the last thing on the list for today's show. Do hope you enjoyed being here with me today. I always enjoy being here with you. And I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.